Okay, so welcome to the Basics of Biblical Research workshop. My name is Andrew Stout. I'm the Associate Librarian for Public Services here at Covenant Seminary Library, or Buswell Library. So this workshop is designed to do a couple of things. First, it offers a basic overview of how to use library resources. And secondly, it helps you learn how to pinpoint resources on specific biblical passages. So let's start off by talking about commentaries, kind of one of the standard resources we use in seminary. Can everybody see the screen okay? Okay, thanks, Aaron. So when you start thinking about using commentaries for your research, one helpful tool is going to be commentary guides or surveys. So we've got a few here. The New Testament Commentary Survey put out by Baker, that's by D.A. Carson. The Old Testament Commentary Survey by Tremper Longman. And then a Guide to Biblical Commentaries and Reference Works by John Evans. These are all good sort of overviews of different commentaries, and they have, annotations sort of describing each commentary, the viewpoint it's written from, its strengths and weaknesses. These are all available in the library. The first two, the ones by Carson and Longman, are available multiple places in the reference section. They're available in the circulating collection. They are also available as ebooks for our distance students. A Guide to Biblical Commentaries by John Evans is not available as an ebook. Another resource we provide in the library are our commentary guides on the library website. These are resources that we produce that are focused on the specific holdings in our collection. Okay, so here we are at the library homepage. You scroll down under library services, we have a link for guides and helps, where we list all of our various reference guides and how-to guides. You scroll down a little bit further, we have some of the featured guides. So the Turabian Citation Guide, APA Style Resources, and our Commentary Guide. So these are heavily used guides. We also have, these are available on the website as we're looking at now. They're also available in hard copy at the library circulation desk. First of all, we have general recommendations. If you click on this recommended commentary series guide, we recommend commentary series and give you some details about those. We also have a guide to non-Western commentaries to kind of give a little bit fuller perspective than a lot of our commentaries give. We have a guide to each book of the Old Testament. And then if you scroll down further, we have a guide to each book of the New Testament. So let's start by looking at Leviticus. So some things to note here are the relevant call number regions. So these are the Library of Congress call numbers that begin the section on Leviticus and then the section on Pentateuch. And if you click one of these, you'll see it will take you to all the books in the collection that are in that call number range. So it'll be all the books, it'll be different books dealing with Leviticus. And you see under our results, we've got about 60 results here. So that gives you a broad overview of the books and commentaries that that you can find in the library on Leviticus. But then here under major commentaries, we feature some of the more important, kind of more relevant commentaries for our particular institution. So let's take a look at Leviticus, an Introduction and Commentary by J. Sklar. That's in the Tyndale Old Testament Commentaries series. Click the link. It'll take you here to the records that we have for J. Sklar's Leviticus commentary in the library catalog. The first one you see here is a record for the physical book. We have 2 records here for our ebook. That's just duplicated at the moment, but they're representing the same resource. So if we click on the record for the hard copy, I want to point out a couple of things about this record. First, you want to note the location. So we've got 2 different locations here. The first 2 copies, and each line here represents a different copy of the book that you can find in the library. So under location, we've got Covenant Seminary reference for the first 2 items, and then Covenant Seminary stacks for the last 2 items. Covenant Seminary reference is part of our reference collection. You'll notice the status says library use only, so those books do not check out, they stay in the library. But then the entries for the Covenant Seminary stacks, that's our main collection, our main circulating collection that you can check out. So for the first copy there, you'll see it's due later this month. And then the second copy is available. So there is 1 copy of J. Sklar's Leviticus commentary that's available to check out if you are on campus. And of course, the call number here will indicate where that is located on the shelves down in the stacks or in the reference section. Let's jump back to the initial results and look at the record for the ebook. Right now, the location says Covenant Seminary Electronic Reserve, and the call number is listed as Pentateuch, which that's just indicating that it's on reserve for Pentateuch class. It's still available to anybody, regardless of whether or not you're in the class, but it just makes it a little bit easier for people in that class to find that book since it's a required book for their class. Click this link, it'll take us through to the ebook itself. And in looking at the record here for the book, I want to point out a few things. First of all, if you look at the concurrent user level, it shows it's unlimited user access. So some books will have different user access. You'll see some that say 1 user, some that'll say 2, some that'll say 3. And then some like this one will be unlimited user. So if it's got 1 user, that means 1 person can use it at a time. It's got 2 users, 2 people can use it at a time, etc. So this one should always be available. Your access will never be blocked because someone else is using it. Another thing to point out would be the publisher permissions. On this particular book, you can print, email, or save 100 pages. You also have unlimited copy and paste options on that. The copy and paste option is really convenient. If you're working on a paper and you need to include a quote from the book, you can just copy and paste that into your Word document. Print, email, and save 100 pages is also a really convenient feature. So it allows you to either email to yourself, or save up to 100 pages of the book. You can just save that on your computer, and those 100 pages, you receive that in the form of a PDF, and then you have that PDF in perpetuity. That is yours. It's never going to revoke your access because a checkout period is up or anything like that. So that's and then different ebooks will have different permissions. Some will say limit of 12 pages that you can print, email, or save. But this one's pretty liberal, and a lot of the ebooks in our catalog have similar permissions to this one. Let's look at our usage options over here on the left. This one's available as a PDF full text. So if you click the link, it'll take you through to a PDF of the book. You see the cover there. You can navigate here on the side using table of contents. And up here at the top, you can see the options to email pages. So you can punch in your email address, choose current page and the next 100 pages. You can also just choose this section which can be kind of a convenient way to do it. Then you email that to yourself, and you have a PDF of that page range. Let's go back to the record. We also have it as available as an EPUB full text, which is a slightly different format, slightly different look. There's also the full download option. Most of the time, the PDF full text or the EPUB full text is going to be the most convenient way to access these ebooks. The full download option does require you to download some special software and create an account with EBSCO, the company that provides this database. So the advantage of downloading the entire book allows you to, it allows you to, if you prefer to read the book on your iPad or your tablet, that's one advantage. And also it ensures that you will have access to the book for 2 weeks at a time. With this particular title, it's not really an issue because there are unlimited users, so you're never going to be denied access. But if you're really needing kind of sustained access to a book that has just one or two user limit, then downloading the book could be the better option. Okay. Yeah, so downloading ebooks. Here we've got a link to our guide for downloading ebooks. Because the downloading process is a little bit more complicated, we do have a separate guide that you can find on the website under that Guides and Help link. And it kind of walks you through the process of creating your account with EBSCOhost and downloading the software that they require you to use. Now we're going to look at some other ways to get books. So once again, I'm going to direct you, later on you can look at the guide for online students. That's also under our Guides and Help section on the library website. And that gives you kind of, that includes the information we're going to talk about and some more information as well about resources for online students. Okay, so one major resource is Mobius. Mobius is a regional consortium of libraries that allows fast and easy interlibrary loan borrowing. This map gives you kind of an idea of the location of the various libraries in Mobius. So they're mostly in Missouri. We've got some in Iowa, some in Oklahoma. More and more, they're kind of branching out and expanding, so more libraries are kind of constantly being added to Mobius. So with Mobius, you can get books delivered from any Mobius library to any Mobius library. So items get delivered in 3 to 5 business days, and then we send you an email when they are available and ready for you at the front desk of the library, assuming that you are on campus. You can also go to any Mobius library and check out books at that library in person using your Covenant student ID card. Qualify that by saying if you're going to go visit in person another Mobius library, say St. Louis University, if they're part of Mobius. If you'd like to go visit their library and check out material there, right now, the best idea would be to call ahead or email someone ahead of time just to see what their what COVID precautions they're taking. Some libraries are still not open to the public generally. They may just be open to their students and their faculty and staff. But Mobius includes other seminaries, seminaries like Concordia, Lutheran Seminary, Kendrick Glennon, which is a Catholic seminary, and then a couple Baptist seminaries, Midwestern and Southwestern. It also includes university libraries like Washington University, St. Louis University, and the University of Missouri. So we pool all of the collections from those various institutions, and that is a huge resource. So I'm going to start here again on the library homepage. Let's say I am looking for a Leviticus commentary, specifically the Leviticus commentary in the Anchor Bible series. So in the search box here, which this is just searching Covenants collection. Okay, so the Leviticus commentary in the Anchor Bible series, it's got 3 volumes to it. You see the first volume down here, second volume up here, and the third volume here. So let's say I'd like to check out a copy of Leviticus 17 to 22. So we looked at before, I see the location, the call number, and the status on Covenants copies of this book. And the status here, we see the first one is a reference book, so it's library use only. And the other 2 stacks copies that I could normally check out say that they are not, they're checked out and not due back until January 3rd. So I still really need this particular commentary though. So the next step I could take would be to hit the search Mobius link here at the top. So by hitting that link, it takes me out to the Mobius catalog. And again, this catalog searches the collections of all the libraries that are involved in Mobius. So we've got a couple records here for the Leviticus 17 to 22 commentary that I'm looking for. I'll go ahead and click on one here. Scroll down at the bottom. You'll see the various locations that book is available. And again, the status, whether or not it's actually available or whether it's checked out, whether it's requestable or not. So it looks like there are a lot of available copies in Mobius right now. So if I would like to request that, to have that sent to me here at Covenants Library, I just hit the request button. And then it'll ask you to choose your library, the library at your home institution. So we're going to choose Covenant Theological Seminary. Submit that information. And use a very appropriate dummy account here. So once you submit your first and last name and then your student ID number that you can find printed on your student ID card, if you have one. If you don't have a student ID card printed, you can find that those credentials on the profile of your MyCTS portal. So you can find that information there. And then pick up library, you can choose, this is one of the unique things about Mobius, is you can choose the specific library you would like to pick the book up at. So most of the time for Covenant students, if you're on campus, that's going to be us, Covenant Theological Seminary. But let's say you live closer to Concordia Seminary, which is also in St. Louis. If it's more convenient for you to pick up the book at Concordia Seminary, you can select Concordia Seminary. But in this case, we're going to choose Covenant Seminary and then submit that request. And in this case, it's actually allowing me to choose which library I'd like to have send the book to me. Doesn't really matter which one it is. Any library with an available copy, you'll just want to make sure that the status says available before you click submit. But I'll go ahead and request it from Westminster College here. Request selected item. And then it says my request was successful. So that book should be sent to Covenant and be available in the next 3 to 5 days. Again, I would get an email when that book is ready. So in addition to Mobius, we have a couple other reciprocal borrowing networks that we're a part of. The first is the ATLA Reciprocal Borrowing Program. And the next one is ACL, or the Association of Christian Librarians Reciprocal Borrowing Program. And back on the library homepage, we've got some more information about those reciprocal borrowing programs. If you go down here to Library Services, and click the link for Mobius and interlibrary loan. So first thing here, we have kind of an overview of Mobius. We just touched on that resource. We've also got information here about traditional interlibrary loans, which we will come back to in just a moment. Prospector, which is another library consortium that kind of partners with Mobius to extend the reach of what we can borrow just a little bit. And then we have some of our reciprocal borrowing agreements. Like I said, we have the ATLA reciprocal borrowing program. ATLA is, it stands for the American Theological Library Association. So lots of theological and religious institutions participate in this program across the country. I've got maps here just to kind of give you a picture of what's available to you with ATLA here. Let's see, St. John Vianney Seminary in Denver. So if you're in Denver, St. John Vianney Seminary participates in the ATLA program. That means that you can go to that seminary and using your covenant credentials, you have borrowing privileges at that library. Let's see, Urshan Graduate School here in St. Louis. Wartburg Theological Seminary in Dubuque, Iowa. So you see there are lots of institutions across the country that participate in ATLA. So if you're near any one of the, if you're a distant student and you're near any one of those institutions, you can make use of their resources. We recommend that you call ahead and let them know that you'd like to come make use of their library. They need to do a little bit of legwork, touching base with us to make sure that you're actually a student at Covenant, just to verify your credentials. Then we have a similar map here for the ACL borrowing program. So Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary participates in that program. So if you are a distant student, you can't make it at least you can't regularly make it to Covenant's library. You can always check these maps to see if there is another library in your area that gives you borrowing privileges. Let's talk about interlibrary loan for a minute. So through Covenant, you can get books sent to campus. Otherwise, you can also use interlibrary loan at your local public library. So, we've talked about Mobius, which is a form of interlibrary loan, but it is, because it's part of a consortium where we have an agreement with these other libraries, we have a courier that goes back and forth between our libraries. It's a kind of an expedited version of interlibrary loan. Traditional interlibrary loan is something that just about most libraries, including public libraries across the country, participate in. So if you are, that's one tip that we give online students in particular. If you can't make it into our library on a regular basis, contact someone at your local public library. Your local public library may not have, well, they won't have the the theological collection that we have at Covenant and that other theological libraries have. However, if you've identified specific books that you need to get a hold of, most public libraries will allow you to request those via interlibrary loan. At Covenant, our interlibrary loan is free, and at most places it's going to be either free or very low cost. You do want to allow adequate time. If you're requesting books through Mobius, they come pretty quickly. Interlibrary loan can take longer because in that process, the library that's looking to borrow the book has to go out and find another library somewhere in the country that has it. Often it gets mailed to the borrowing library, so it can just take a little more time to get hold of that book. So check with if you are going to make use of interlibrary loan at another library, say your local public library, you'll want to check with that library for their details and procedures. Okay, so we've talked about Mobius, we've talked about reciprocal borrowing programs, we've talked about interlibrary loan. These are all different ways that you can get a hold of books beyond what's available in Covenant's collection. But let's say you're working on a paper, it's due the next day, and you need that one more resource to help you kind of flesh out the paper. So you need a resource right now. If you go down here to other catalogs, we list the various catalogs in our collection, including the ebook catalog. So if you search in this main search box like we did earlier when we were looking for a Leviticus commentary, you'll see results that include the books in our print collection, our circulating collection. You'll also see ebooks in that search. However, if you want to see just what we have available as an ebook, you can go to our ebook catalog. So let's again say we're working on our Leviticus project. We want to see what commentaries on Leviticus are available. See here at the top under search results, we've got 27 results, including the commentary by Sklar that we looked at before, and a whole bunch of other Leviticus commentaries. So if you are not on campus and you need to have a book in front of you right now, the ebook catalog is kind of the quickest way to see what's available to you immediately and remotely. So we've talked about commentaries. If you're working on an assignment that requires you to use commentaries and to do some interpretive work on a particular biblical passage, one question that students will have is, well, what about study Bibles? So very often a study Bible like the ESV study Bible can be a really helpful tool to get started on your research. Again, let's say you're working on a paper on Leviticus and you reference the study notes in your ESV study Bible. You find something really helpful there. Do you want to use that in a paper? We're generally going to say no, and your professors are generally going to say no. Partially because if someone has written the study notes for a study Bible, chances are they've also written a commentary on that book of the Bible. And that's going to be the much better, much fuller resource than the study notes in a Bible. So, J. Sklar wrote a commentary on Leviticus, and then he also wrote the study notes for the ESV study Bible. So that's just kind of a good tip. If you find study notes in a study Bible that you find really helpful, kind of follow up and search around in our catalog or another library catalog for to see if that author has also written a commentary on that book. Okay, we've talked about commentaries. Now let's talk about journal articles. Where can you find scholarly articles? For religion theology courses, the main our main databases are the ATLA Religion Database, New Testament abstracts, Old Testament abstracts, and religious and theological abstracts. ATLA is the primary database you're going to use. And we'll look at that here in a minute. It's the database that will have the most full text results. So, you do a search on a topic, you get a list of results, and then you can just click through straight to a PDF on a lot of those results. New Testament, Old Testament, and religious and theological abstracts, they're going to have records for a lot of resources that you may not have immediate access to. But there are other ways that you can sort of get hold of records that you find in those databases. And we'll look at that in a minute here. But all four of these resources, there's going to be a lot of overlap between them. They're going to contain records for a lot of the same resources, but each one will also have some particular resources that are kind of unique to it. So if you're trying to be really, really thorough in the research that you're doing on a particular topic, the best strategy a lot of times will be to first look at the ATLA Religion Database to see what's available in full text there, and then to conduct the same search in these other databases to see what unique resources they may have there as well. And all four of these databases support searching by scripture citation, which is what we are going to look at next. Okay, so once again, we are at the library homepage. Scroll down under, again, other catalogs. We have a link to our research databases. That will give you a list of all of the different databases that we either subscribe to. Some are just open access databases that are freely available online, but they're particularly valuable resources, so we include them in that database list. So you can see here we've got over 60 databases in this list. It's a pretty long list. Let's go back to the home page. So you can access that list from here. If you scroll down a little bit, you can also access it from the journal articles and databases list. And here we give you some filters to use. You can click the link to view that same comprehensive list of all of our databases. You can also click religion and theology to reduce the list down to just those databases that deal with religion and theology, counseling and psychology, education, then general. We're going to take a look at the religion and theology filter here. So the first result is the Atlas Religion database with Atlas Serials Plus. And then you also see New Testament, Old Testament, and religious and theological abstracts as well. And then some more databases dealing with religion and theology. We're going to go ahead and do a search in the Atlas Religion database. Okay, so to this point, we've looked at how to find commentaries on Leviticus. But another important resource, if you're doing an exegetical paper, will be journal articles that deal with the particular passage that you're trying to interpret. There is a challenge within this database. But we'll start off with some examples. So we've got two strategies for finding journal articles on a particular passage of scripture. The first one's easier, and the second one is a little more complicated. So the first one is just to use the hierarchical scripture authority tab here. We select scriptures. We've been working with. Now instead, we've looked at Leviticus a lot. Let's say Genesis. We're dealing with Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. So you can expand out from Genesis, and you can select your chapter 1, and then you can expand from there and choose a particular verse. So once you've chosen a verse, and you can do that, you can sort of generate results at any level. You can generate them at the book level, at the chapter level, or at the verse level, like we did here. You see, we've got 1,570 results for journal articles and essays and books that deal with Genesis 1, 2. So basically, this is going to find results in this database that deal with that chapter and verse, but it will include results. Some of them are going to be specific, like this, where you can see it's Genesis 1, 2 is kind of the subject of that article. But then here, if you look at this result, it's reflections on Mark 15:31. However, it's included in these results because at some point in the article, it also deals with that passage in Genesis. The complication here is that this can be a great way to kind of get at what resources are available initially to give you kind of a survey, but it also gives you a whole lot of results. Like I said, it's over 1,000 results. So there's a way to get a little more specific with what we're looking for, so that you can get articles that deal more specifically with the range of verses that you're working with. So to do that, instead of the scriptures tab here, we're going to go to more and select indices. And then down here, we want to select the index that we want to browse. We're looking for the Bible citation index. So this is the thing that's a little bit complicated. about searching for scriptures in this database. So let's say switching from the Old Testament, let's go to the New Testament. Let's say I'm working on a paper dealing with hairstyles and head coverings in 1 Corinthians. And my passage is 1 Corinthians 11, 2-16. If I just put in what I would instinctively put in, 1 Corinthians, that's not going to result, that's not going to give me the results that I want because the database doesn't recognize what that is. It doesn't recognize that I'm searching for the first book of Corinthians. It has a special way that it indexes Corinthians. It is Corinthians first. And so if I'm looking for resources on 1 Corinthians 11, enter Corinthians first 11 and then browse. Now this gives me a great big long list of results, but you'll see here, so in this, this shows me all of the resources in the database that deal specifically with 1 Corinthians 11, 1 through 12. We've got one specific article. 1 Corinthians 11, 1 through 16, you've got 9 resources. So what I want to do to kind of get a, to construct this search and get kind of a comprehensive list is I want to go through and select every entry that is within the range of the biblical passage that I'm dealing with. And my verse range is chapter 11, verses 2-16. So any of these that are in that range, I'm going to select. Actually, these I do not want, because you see here it's chapter 11, verse 11. So that's still within my range, even though it extends a little bit beyond it by going to verse 19. And actually here I do want this chapter 11, verse 12. And then the next entry here jumps to 13. I don't want that. I don't want 14. Then we come back around to 1 Corinthians 11, 2, which I do want. First Corinthians 11, 20 is out of my range, and all of these succeeding verse ranges are going to be out of my scope. Now we'll come back around to 1 Corinthians 11, 3, which is in that 2 to 12 verse range that I want. 11:30, that's out of my range. Okay, and so that's all of the passages on 1 Corinthians 11. Now we get into 1 Corinthians 12, which I do not want. So I've selected all of these entries. I'm going to hit add. And it takes all of those selections and creates this really complicated search up at the top here. Okay, so if you look at the search results up top here, you see I've got 210 results. So that's a lot more manageable than 1,000 plus that I saw when I was looking at the hierarchical scripture search option. One thing we want to do to limit this number down even a little bit more is I'm going to go down to these filters here. You can see refine results. You can use these filters to sort of narrow down your search a little bit. And under language, I'm going to choose English. I just want resources in English. That brings my results down to 171. So that narrows it down even a little bit more. But you can see this first result here is a rhetorical analysis of 1 Corinthians 11, 2 through 16. So it gives me an article on exactly the verse range that I'm working with. And the second one is 1 Corinthians 11, 7 to 12, which is also part of that verse range that I'm looking at. I'm going to go down here a little bit and let's look at this one, John Calvin and the status and role of women in church and society. So on the record here, you can see under the scripture citation field, it's got 1 Corinthians 11:7. So it's talking about Calvin's understanding of women in church and society, and it deals specifically with one of the verses that's in that small verse range that I was looking for. Let's go ahead and see. I've got the full PDF full text here on this particular resource. So if I click that, it will take me straight to the PDF. So I've got full text access. However, there are going to be a lot of results where you don't see that particular, you don't see that PDF link. So let's look at this one. Slavery and the gendered construction of worship fails in 1 Corinthians. Again, this is academic journal, so it's a journal article, but I don't see that PDF link. What I can do is click Find Full Text at Covenant. And then it will show me how else it might be available to me. Actually, I'm going to go back. Let's take a look at this article on John Calvin one more time, because it's actually a little bit better example of the different access options. So again, assuming I don't have this PDF full text link on an article, I can click Find Full Text at Covenant, and it will show me all of the different ways that it is that the article is available to me. So this first option is EBSCO Atla Religion Database. That's what we were just looking at. Also, we have our print holdings in the J. Oliver Buswell Junior Library. If we had this in print, it would give you information about it right here. If none of these were available, if we didn't have it through a database, and if we didn't have it in our print holdings, I could place an interlibrary loan request. That's going to prompt you for your credentials here. So then that takes us to a interlibrary loan or an ILL form. It auto-populates the information about the article, so you can just review that. Like here, it shows you a page range. It doesn't have an ending page range. So if I go back and look at the pages that are listed for it, ends on page 211. I want to add 211. You can specify your delivery method, which is typically going to be email. That's the fastest way to get, that's basically exclusively how we do interlibrary loan for journal articles. And then you can say, I agree, submit this request. And then it submits your request, and those are delivered. Journal article requests tend to be pretty quick, but we do say to allow up to a week for an ILL to be delivered. Just going back to this page one more time, if it is available in the print holdings in the library's print journal collection, which in this case it is. We do have a print copy of this journal. You can come, you can use it in the library. If you're a distant student, you can go ahead and put in an ILL request, even if we do have it in print. And then one other thing to note about the database here is that if we do have full text access, you have some of those same options that we looked at before with ebooks. You can email the article to yourself. You can print it off. You can put it in a folder and generate a list of articles that you can keep track of. So you don't have to just you don't just have to use it in the database itself. So we're going to look at one last thing here related to journal articles. Let's say you find a resource that you read an article and you find a citation in that article. It's referencing a journal, and you want to see if the library has it. You go to the other catalog section here and go to journals list. You can punch in the name of a journal. And then you'll get a list here that shows you the various ways that we have access to that particular journal. So the journal for the study of the New Testament, we have access to it. We have access to it through our Sage Journals database, and the coverage begins in 1999, and it goes through the current issues. We also have access to this journal through the EBSCO Academic Search Premier database. That coverage starts a little bit earlier, but then it ends a little bit sooner. ATLA gives us access the furthest back, so the access starts in 1978, but then it lacks the most recent 12 months of that journal. So you have to wait 12 months to get a new issue. Then we also have print holdings, and the option for placing an interlibrary loan request for a journal from that, or a article from that journal. Here we go. We've looked at a whole bunch of resources, commentaries, journal articles. Before we finish up, let's just talk for a minute about identifying academic resources. So I've got two publications here, both put out by Covenant Seminary. Go ahead and take a look at those and tell me which do you think is an academic source. If you think 1, Covenant Magazine, go ahead and put 1 in the chat. And if you think 2, Presbyterion, if you think that's the academic source, go ahead and put a 2 in the chat. Aaron says 2. 2, 2. 2 seems to be the consensus, and yes, that would be correct. Just sort of, this is a little bit superficial, but it's fairly reliable. Aesthetically speaking, academic journals are a little more utilitarian. So with Presbyterion, which is, Presbyterion is the scholarly journal that Covenant puts out. It features a lot of the scholarship of our faculty and also other people throughout sort of the evangelical world. But you see, it lists the featured articles on the front, and authors and special contributions. Covenant Magazine is a more popular publication, and it features more photographs and updates on seminary life and that sort of stuff. Peer-reviewed is really another important term to keep in mind as you're looking for scholarly resources. If a resource is peer-reviewed, it's approved by one or more experts in the field. So that involves a careful review of a journal article by another scholar in the field before it's published. This helps to ensure quality, and ideally it means that the peer-reviewed articles should be more trustworthy. The process isn't perfect. Depending on the journal and the reviewers involved, the process can be more or less rigorous, and sometimes things slip through that are not in fact quality scholarship. So if you think about the peer review process, say in the sciences, where you're conducting experiments and producing results from those experiments, the peer review process is a little more straightforward, and that people can replicate those experiments to see if they're valid or not. In the humanities and in theology, it's a little bit of a more indeterminate process. Just because an article is peer-reviewed doesn't mean that everything in it is accurate, but it does help to ensure quality. And like I said, it's not a perfect solution. Yeah, not a perfect solution. So even when an article is peer-reviewed, you still need to stay engaged, still need to think critically about it. One last question for you here. Of these two books, go ahead and put it in the chat again. Which do you think is the academic source? 1, Liturgy of the Ordinary, or 2, Sermon on the Mount and Spiritual Exercises? These are both books on spirituality, but they're not quite the same. Yep, Aaron says 2, the Sermon on the Mount and Spiritual Exercises. That would be accurate. Again, same kind of principle in place. Liturgy of the Ordinary is a great book, and it's got a fun cover, which should probably clue you into the fact that this may not be a scholarly resource. It may be geared at a more general audience. So last word here on evaluating sources. The CRAAP test can be a really useful guide to evaluating a scholarly source. So CRAAP is an acronym that stands for currency. So you want to ask, when was the resource published, and how important is its currency to the research that you're doing? So how important is it that the commentary that you're going to use on Leviticus is up to date? Chances are you will want to consult some more up-to-date commentaries that have been written, but also you may want to consult Calvin's commentary on Leviticus, because in the humanities and theology, we're not necessarily dependent on the most cutting-edge resource. A lot of times, those older resources are going to hold just as much weight. Relevance: how does it relate to your question? Who is the intended audience? Is it written at an appropriate level? So again, as you're evaluating commentaries, some commentaries are going to be written more for pastors, are going to be more homiletically oriented, but it's going to be lighter on exegetical work. And if you're doing an exegetical paper, you'll probably want to use a commentary that focuses more on exegesis and less on devotion or preparing for a sermon or something like that. Authority: who is the author? Who's the publisher, the source, and or the sponsor? What are the author's credentials? Do they have a PhD or some other credential in the area that they're writing on? Why is the author qualified to write on the topic? Accuracy: what is the source of the information? Is there supporting evidence? Has the article been peer-reviewed? Are there errors? That's one thing I do like to mention. Normally mention it when we on that slide on peer review, but when you are in the ATLA religion database, One of the filters you can use to limit some of your results is there's a peer review limiter, which just sort of reduces a search down to only those resources that have been through the peer review process. And as I said, that's not always a perfect process, and that's reflected in the fact that in ATLA, if you limit to peer-reviewed resources, one of the things you're going to filter out is journal articles from Presbyterion, which again is Covenant's scholarly journal. The reason that's the case is Presbyterion has like an editorial review policy, so the faculty reviews submissions and sort of approves them to be published or not. But the ATLA database doesn't recognize that as peer review in the more robust sense, which includes sending an article submission out to multiple scholars from other institutions in the same field. So those peer review limiters and databases can be really helpful, but sometimes they filter out resources that you do want to use. So you just want to be aware of that when you're searching in a database. And then finally, purpose. Why does this resource exist? Does it involve fact, opinion, or propaganda? Does it seem objective and impartial, or is bias evident? So that handy acronym, CRAAP, will help you just keep some of those important questions in mind that you're going to want to be asking as you evaluate resources. Oh, and theological perspective. This will be our last slide. Identifying the theological perspective of a resource that you're using will be important. Of course, our collection is geared towards Reformed and evangelical resources, but we have lots of resources from lots of different traditions. So you want to examine key parts like the table of contents, prefaces, introductions, and conclusions, bibliographies, and indices. These are all things that can help clue you into the tradition or the perspective that the author is working from. Reviews are another really helpful resource. When you're searching in the ATLA religion database, you'll also find a lot of book reviews. So if you have a book that you're wanting to include quotations from or use some way in a research paper, searching for the title of the book in the ATLA religion database will often turn up critical scholarly reviews on that book. So that can be a helpful way of getting at the author's perspective. Also, the publisher's website can provide information. And of course, you can always ask a librarian to help you find more information. We don't always just give you all the answers. We don't just say, here are all the resources you should use for your research project, but we'll help you identify some important ones and help equip you to do more research on your own.